Cindy, your Sassy Southern Grandma. We're going to talk today about adult children living in your house. Now, this could be your child that's graduated from high school and is still living at home. It could be your child who left home and came back for some reason. Maybe they lost a job or they're moving back to the area and they need to get their feet back under them. It could be your daughter got divorced or your son and they need a place to stay for a while. You always want to be a safe place and a soft place for them to fall, but it's your house and they're adults, and you also need to have some kind of structure, because if you don't, things can get out of hand pretty quickly and there can be a lot of conflict, a lot of family conflict on those types of things. So today we're going to talk about some ways you can set some rules, some boundaries, some consequences, and help make an environment where everybody can get along, because everybody knows what direction we're going in. Some of these could also apply to older teenagers living in your home that are 16, 17, 18, still in high school, but need to learn some responsibility. We can't just throw them out at 18 and say, go live life. That's what happened to me. I lived a very sheltered, structured, strict life at home, and then at 18, when I decided to move out, I didn't really know how to be an adult. I didn't have like a transition between being a student and being an adult on my own, because my parents really never prepared me for a lot of things. They didn't allow me to make a lot of decisions. They didn't allow me to make a lot of mistakes. So because of that, because my environment was so strict and controlled at home, once I got outside that home, I really kind of didn't know what to do with myself. So it's a good thing to start setting some rules and boundaries and giving a little bit of freedom to your older teenagers. When mine were older, especially once they got a license, they were given some more freedom as long as they could be trusted with it. I always told my kids, I will trust you until you give me a reason not to. And they all did at some point, but you have to give that trust first. You can't make them go out and earn the trust if they haven't done anything to be distrusted for. So give them the benefit of the doubt to start with. Give them a little bit of freedom. Give them a little leash. Let them go out and find out, what can they handle? What kind of lessons do they need to learn? What lessons do you need to teach them? And what lessons does life need to teach them? So when you've got adults living in your house, you need to have some ground rules. Like, these are rules that are for anybody in your house. Like, no smoking inside by anybody at any time. No coming home at 2 o'clock in the morning and disturbing everybody who's trying to sleep. Whatever those rules are that you have for your household that are sometimes pretty much unspoken and understood, when someone comes back in that hasn't lived there in a while, they may think, I can just do whatever. They need to know that there are some ground rules. Can they have a pet? Do they have a pet they're trying to bring back in? Maybe one of you has allergies and that's not allowed. Maybe they start talking about getting a pet and you have to say, wait a minute, this isn't something we can have in our house right now. And those things, if not spoken out loud, in fact, sit down. It doesn't hurt to write these things down. If you've got something in writing and everybody's agreed on it, you don't necessarily have to sign it, but if you want to, you can. Just an understanding on paper that everybody knows what everybody else's responsibilities are. It's not just them, it's you as well. You're the adult in the house, but they may expect things from you that you're not having any idea that they're expecting from you. So the best thing to do is to sit down and talk these things out. So first of all, set your ground rules. What are things that anybody who comes to stay in your house would have to do or not do? Then you need to sit down and talk about expectations. And all of this can be done at one time, or you can see what kind of things need to be addressed and then sit down and talk about them. But it's important that you don't just shoot somebody a text and say, hey, I thought you were taking the trash out this morning. You should have taken it out. Didn't you see it was overflowing? It's better to have those expectations said out loud ahead of time than to expect something from somebody that they didn't even know you were expecting them to do, but you assumed they were going to. So general rules, your basic rules of living there is one thing, but expectations is more of a personal, targeted, this is what you're expected to do while you stay in our house. I think any adult that lives in your house should chip in with any of the chores that need to be done. That needs to be expressed. It needs to be understood who's going to do what. No excuses. If you're an adult, there's no excuse for not doing what you're expected to do. Especially if they're living there and not paying anything, you're paying all the bills and they're living there. by all means, they should be able to pitch in on some chores and pitch in on dishes or cooking a meal once in a while, or maybe you need to set up a rotating system of chores, whatever works for you, but something that's specifically said, something that's written down, something that they understand these are the expectations of you while you're in our house. For example, you may agree that they're going to pay $200 towards living there for room and board. They're going to pay $200 a month or $200 a week, whatever it is that's agreed upon. And then when they don't pay it and you say something about it, they shouldn't act surprised. It should be something that's already talked about and a date set or day of the week. And if they don't pay it, then there needs to be some consequences, which we'll get to in the next point. But those things need to be expressed out loud. That shouldn't come as a surprise to them that you've already told them this is what we expect and they've agreed to it. If they're there because they don't have a job, then what are your expectations about them job hunting? You can't let them lay around till noon every day and then get up and play video games all day and then expect them to magically have a job. Some kids kind of have that attitude, like they're going to come to the door and somebody's going to come to the door and offer them a job. That's not going to happen. So you need to set some expectations, realistic, but also expectations that they need to be abiding by. Like if you think they should put in 3 applications a day or they should put in 5 applications a week, and show you and give you the proof that they have done these things for the privilege of living in your home. It's not unreasonable, it's not unloving. It's teaching them that you're an adult and life has consequences and this is what you have to do in order to be an adult. So many kids, when they're their teens, they can't wait to be an adult, can't wait to get out, they can't wait to get out and live on their own and do whatever they want to, whenever they want to, with nobody telling them what to do. Then they get out there and find out that's not life. Somebody's always going to be telling you what to do. If it's nobody but the electric company telling you, you need to pay or we're turning it off. When you're setting these expectations, ask yourself, what do I expect from this adult to keep peace in this house? What do I expect this adult to do to pull their weight so that I'm not pulling all the weight? What do I expect from this other adult? Sometimes it's hard to think of our kids as not our kids, but as peers. If they're in your house and they're adults and they're at an age, especially if they're past 30, for heaven's sakes, they need to be doing more than enough to show you that they appreciate your letting them stay there and they're doing everything they can to get on their own feet. Kids in their 20s, sometimes their brains aren't working correctly because their frontal lobe isn't developed yet. So we have to take that in consideration, but we also have to guide them and teach them and say, you do A plus B, you get C. But if you don't do A, you're not going to get C. You know, you've got to train them, and hopefully you've done that all the time you've been raising them, but especially if they've come back into your home and they've been out kind of doing their own thing, they come back, they're not going to be able to do their own thing all the time at your house. All of this, teaching them, giving them expectations, teaches them to grow and teaches them to respect that this is your house and keeps you happy because you can see they're making some progress. It's important to sit down and talk to them at the beginning when they start to come back to your house or when they're already at your house, and you need to set some expectations and some rules. But you also need to be willing to talk again along the way. If things kind of go off the rails, you can't be afraid of conflict. You can't be afraid of hurting somebody's feelings. You can't be afraid of saying, this isn't working for me. It's important that you sit down and look them eye to eye and say, we need to discuss this and come to some kind of compromise because this is not working. It's a good way to put it is to always use I statements. Don't say, you didn't take out the trash, you didn't fill up the dishwasher, you didn't. You can say, I feel disrespected when you don't do your part that you agreed to do. When you don't do those things, it makes me feel like you don't appreciate staying here. And it makes me feel like you're being disrespectful to my home and my things and the fact that I'm allowing you to stay here. That's not an unreasonable request. That's not an unreasonable thing to say to your children. Some people have a difficulty changing from, even though we're calling them our children, they are adults. They're no longer children, and they are not going to act like adults until we expect them to act like adults. If we expect them to act like children, that's what they're going to do, because they're going to get away, most people are going to get away with whatever they can get away with. Where the rubber meets the road is where you set up consequences. You want them to understand that, yeah, this is mama and I told her I'd pay her $200, but I don't have it, or I spent it somewhere else, and blah, blah, blah. When you sit down and talk about the rules and the expectations, you also need to talk about consequences. If you don't pay the $200 on the day that you said you were going to pay it, I'm going to ask you for it. If you don't have it and you don't pay me, then you can't use the Wi-Fi for a week and a half or 2 weeks or whatever seems reasonable to you. They need to understand that you don't pay a bill, you don't get the privilege of whatever it was you were paying for. You have to start out kind of small, but if they continue to refuse to go by the rules and the expectations, then things have to get more intense. There may be times where you have to say, okay, you can't come in at 2 o'clock. We agreed on this. You have to come in at a reasonable hour by midnight, be home so we can get some sleep. We've got to go to work tomorrow. You might not have a job yet, but we do. We've got to get some sleep so we can go to work tomorrow. So we expect you to be in and quiet by midnight, because that's just respectful of everyone in the house. If they break that, you've got to be willing to say, this isn't acceptable. You came in at 2:30, you were slamming doors, you were in the kitchen making meals, and we couldn't sleep. We had to get up and go to work the next morning. You're going to need to find somewhere to stay for the next 2 days. If you can't respect staying here, then you can stay somewhere else. It doesn't take very much of that for them to learn that this is serious. This is not something they can just walk all over mom and daddy about. Also, they should be expected to be respectful to you. If they end up yelling at you or slamming doors or stomping out or whatever, there needs to be consequences for that. You can't stay here and talk to me that way. That's not being bossy or being unreasonable. That's being reasonable expectations of another adult. You wouldn't expect to go talk to your boss that way. You wouldn't expect them to go talk to their boss that way. So why would they come and talk to you that way? So those kinds of things need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed immediately if something like this comes up unexpectedly. If your child blows up and throws a temper tantrum at 27 because something didn't go their way and you're trying to make them pay consequences for it, then they need a reality check is what they need. Because if you don't nip these things in the bud, you're going to get a bigger problem and a bigger problem and a bigger problem, and it's going to be even harder to get them to understand they can't treat you that way. Because once you let it go, it's just like with small children. You can't let things go on and on. You have to stop it and say, this is what's expected of you. This is what happens if you don't do it. Or if you do something you're not supposed to do, this is what's going to happen. It's not a lot different than dealing with small children, except you do expect adults to understand this. If you've set out expectations for hunting for a job and they're either not meeting the expectations of five applications a week or whatever expectations you set, they're not meeting those, they're staying in bed all day, or they're hanging out with their friends, or whatever they're doing that's not meeting what you agreed upon, then you need to set a deadline. Say, okay, in 6 weeks, you need to have somewhere else to live. You need to have a job and somewhere else to live, or you can't stay here anymore. You don't have to go live with somebody else or live with grandma or whoever, but you can't stay here any longer after 6 weeks if you don't have a job. Now, if they buckle down and go get the job, or they buckle down and actually show that they're trying to, then you can lighten up on that a little bit. But they need to know that there's deadlines. They need to know this is not an ongoing thing, that when you're 92, they're still going to be living with you. Things like that do happen. I see it in places that I'm at a lot, where there's a 35-year-old man who comes in the hospital and he can't even make his own decisions without his mama coming and sitting by the bedside and telling him what to do. That's not normal. That's not an adult. That's a 35-year-old boy. So the only way you get that kind of situation is because you didn't set down any expectations and rules ahead of time. Some of this can sound kind of cruel, but this is not being cruel. This is showing them that life has consequences. This is showing them that this is what being an adult is. If they haven't gotten it through their head and they've ended back up in your house because they don't have it in their head yet, it's time for them to understand that. And once you've got your rules established and your consequences, and they know what to expect and you know what to expect, then you can get down to the work of teaching them how to grow forward from here. You can sit down with them and do a mock interview, give them what kind of questions should they expect on an interview. They may not even know what to expect on an interview if it's been a long time or they've only been to 1 or 2 interviews. throw some things at them that they're not expecting. Ask them some questions about that you might have heard at a job interview that kind of took you aside and you really didn't expect it, so that when they get there, they're prepared. Teach them what to wear, teach them how to conduct themselves in an interview and what to expect, so that they can present themselves in a way that will help them get a job. Once they do have money coming in, help them make a budget. I have read about some families that will charge the adult child living in their home a set amount of money per month or week, but they don't spend that money. They don't spend it towards the household expenses. They put it aside for that child. So they're building up money over here. You don't even have to tell them you're doing it. Keep that money that they're paying you to the side, maybe in a savings account or in a separate account or just in a box, that they have money that's accruing, so that when they get ready to move out, they've got some money on hand for first month's rent, last month's rent, deposit, all those things you have to get out on your own. That'd be a nice little nest egg for them to have something whenever they do get ready to move out. But it's important, if they don't know how to make a budget, to sit down with them and explain to them how things are supposed to be. We've all seen those television shows where the dad and the mom decide, okay, we're going to show them what everything costs, and do like a mock job and a mock budget of this is how much you make. Now you got to pay rent. Now you got to pay electricity. Now you've got to eat. Now you've got to put gas in the car. Oops, you've got car insurance. How are you going to pay for all those things? And it kind of gives them a reality check that money is not endless. It doesn't grow on a tree, and they have to live within whatever it is they're going to make. Sometimes this makes children realize, I probably should go to college. I probably should get a degree, because I'm going to need more money than I think I can make. So some of those things are reality checks for them, but it's a good way for you to kind of guide them and not just throw them out there and tell them to do it without giving them any instruction on how to. If your adult child doesn't know how to cook, they should if you raised them in your house, but if they don't know how to cook, tell them that you're going to teach them how to cook a meal every week. You're going to teach them how to do something that's budget friendly, or something that they like, that they can cook whenever they get out there on their own, in the near future when they get to their own place. So those kind of things will help them grow, help them understand, and give them the tools they need to get out there, get a job, get their own place, and be independent, and then they can do whatever they want to at 2 o'clock in the morning, because you're not there to tell them they can't. All of this is just some tools for you to use if you've got that adult child that comes back and things just kind of go haywire because they think, okay, it's party time now, I don't have to pay any bills. No, they need to understand up front that this is the expectation, this is the rules, and this is what happens if you don't follow. I hope you've got some good information out of this today, and be sure and join us next week.
Welcome back now. Here.